So as someone who uses their M4 iPad Pro as their main computer, but then also has the new larger 6.9-inch iPhone 16 Pro Max, you would think that this 8.3-inch iPad mini might not have much room in my ecosystem, but what if I told you this is my absolute favorite iPad of all time, and there's a bunch of reasons why I think you might not need one, but you should seriously consider adding it to your ecosystem. Let's get into it. And now before we get started, leave a comment down below of what your favorite iPad of all time has been, because we've seen different form factors, different sizes, different capabilities, different internal strengths, different chipsets, and now we have this lineup of all these different iPads that are used in multiple different ways. Like I mentioned, I use my M4 13-inch iPad Pro as my main computer, but still somehow this 8.3-inch iPad mini has a beautiful space in my ecosystem for both pleasure and business. But the first reason I want to bring up why I love this thing is the new added Apple Pencil Pro support, and this is either a blessing or a curse depending on who you ask and which iPad you have before, because now with the addition of this new support for the Pencil Pro, you can no longer use an Apple Pencil 2. So if you do have an Apple Pencil 2 laying around, unfortunately because of the way the magnets are set up and the way Apple does their stuff, the Apple Pencil 2 is not compatible, so definitely keep that in mind, but it is compatible with the USB-C Apple Pencil as well as the new Pencil Pro, and I absolutely love the Pencil Pro. It has that hover support, it has the haptic feedback when you use it, you have the squeeze functionality, which has been absolutely great, so I use it a lot for note-taking, for switching in between my object eraser as well as my actual pen. I don't use it too much for artwork or anything like that, but the hover feature that came over from the M2 iPad Pro is still a welcome and added bonus. And it's definitely one of the more underrated features of the new iPad mini, because the Apple Pencil Pro, even though it visually looks identical to the Pencil 2, actually has a ton of tangible differences, like the haptic feedback, like the squeeze functionality, and the Find My support, which is something I've been wanting on an Apple Pencil for years. And I know a lot of people are going to ask me about that grip on my Apple Pencil, and that's going to be the Paperlike pencil grip, which I've been using for years now, and it's a perfect segue into our sponsor, Paperlike. The Paperlike screen protector was actually the very first accessory I ever bought for my original 2018 iPad Pro. It absolutely changed the way I use my iPad, giving me that real paper feel right on my screen, and it's been almost 7 years and I still make sure that I have one for all of my iPads. I recently got the new iPad mini 7 and I knew I needed to throw a Paperlike screen protector on there because it just adds a whole new dimension with how I engage with the iPad mini. Paperlike's nanodot tech gives you the natural resistance of paper, letting you take neater notes, draw with precision, and even makes the sound of pencil on paper. Combine that with the new haptics of the Pencil Pro, and you have a match made in heaven. It is made for creators and doers. It's perfect for artists, designers, students, or anyone who wants the real paper experience in their digital workflow. And with its microbead tech, Paperlike keeps your screen clear and near glare free, making it as beautiful to look at as it is to write on. Not only do they give you 2 Paperlikes on there just in case you mess up, but they also are so confident in their product that they offer a 100-day satisfaction guarantee. So if you're ready to fall in love with writing on your iPad, give Paperlike a try with the link below. And now back to the iPad mini. So the second reason why I think the iPad mini is a great option, and why I definitely think it's worth getting this one versus maybe an older iPad mini 6, because those iPad mini 6s are a very good price point right now, and the design and form factor are identical. So for some people, the iPad mini 6 could be worth it, but the fact that we now have an A17 Pro built into the new iPad mini 7 is a game changer for a lot of reasons. That is the same exact chipset that was in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max, which were some of the best iPhones of all time last year. And again, it's going to be able to do everything that those iPhone Pro Maxes could do, just on a nicer and larger 8.3-inch display. So think about everything that the iPhone 15 Pro Max gave you, and now it's on the iPad mini 7. So the big thing for me here is efficiency and battery performance. The battery on this iPad mini 7 is absolutely insane, especially for the size and the form factor that it is. So if you want something that's a battery champ, both from a usability and a standby mode, definitely take this into consideration that the A17 Pro makes this thing ultra efficient from a battery standpoint. But then again, it's no slouch in the power department. You can do some smaller tasks, of course, like surf the web, go on social media, do the normal content consumption things that you do on an iPad mini. But then if you want to get a little bit more work done on the creative side, like using Lightroom or Affinity Photo, or something that's a little bit more intensive, even editing videos and things like CapCut and LumaFusion, the A17 Pro is going to easily be able to handle all of that stuff. And then included with the USB-C port for the faster data transfer and being able to connect a bunch of peripherals, it can handle pretty much anything that you throw at it when it comes to the A17 Pro. Given it's going to be in a smaller form factor, of course, compared to something like a larger iPad Pro or even your laptop, but for an on-the-go solution, if you want to offload photos directly to your iPad, or if you want to maybe plug in a peripheral to maybe HDMI out to a larger display or something, it is a great solution having the A17 Pro in there. with the iPad mini, and it's handled everything from gaming to work tasks to leisure tasks to personal tasks, and it hasn't hiccuped once whatsoever. And I'm even running the 18.2 beta on here, and it's been running super smoothly. And now what the A17 Pro gives the iPad mini is the ability and support of Apple Intelligence. And like I mentioned, I am running 18.2 on this thing, so I am getting all the different integrations from ChatGPT to being able to use writing tools to image playgrounds to the cleanup tool and even Image Wand in the Notes application. So now having the A17 Pro, like I mentioned, it is a powerhouse of a mobile chipset, but at the same time, it does give us access to Apple Intelligence and all the amazing things that come with that. And I know at first I was a little bit of a skeptic when it came to Apple Intelligence, and I thought Apple was just slapping this on there because every other company and their mother was adding AI into everything. But the more and more that I use Apple Intelligence, the more and more I start to see the vision and the use cases and just the overall capabilities. And I do have a video, depending on when this goes out, that could be out already, talking about visual intelligence and all the use cases. But it is something that I do think people will begin to adopt little by little. And as we've noticed in the past, the superpower of Apple isn't always to be first at something, but they tend to be the best at it when they do implement it. And that's what we're seeing right now with Apple Intelligence. Yes, they're pulling integrations from Google image searches, and they're pulling integrations from ChatGPT, but the way that it's integrated and integrated natively into their own software just makes the experience that much easier and that much better to use overall. So I do love the fact that this does bring Apple Intelligence with the A17 Pro, because it's something that I'm using every single day more and more across all my iOS, iPadOS, and even my macOS devices when I do need so. So Apple Intelligence on this iPad mini is something that is a big leg up, obviously, versus the model that came previously. Now the next thing I do want to talk about is pretty much the design and hardware of the iPad mini, because yes, the design has stayed pretty much exactly the same, if not identical to the last model, which does have that industrial design language with USB-C and the one camera bump, the selfie camera, and everything just looks very pretty and very well put together, and it does fit the Apple aesthetic throughout the entire lineup. And some things that I just wanted to call out for the review's sake in terms of what people should expect is that yes, you're getting Touch ID versus Face ID on here, and even though I'm a big fan of Face ID over Touch ID 99% of the time, the way that it's put on here does make it relatively easy depending on how you're holding it. You can add as many fingers as you want to, so it's something that I got used to relatively quickly. Now, do I wish Face ID was put onto here? Absolutely, but Touch ID shouldn't be a deterrent to get the iPad mini if it's something that you really want to get into, which is something that I let happen with the previous iPad mini. It was one of those things where if I didn't have Face ID, I didn't really want it, but again, Touch ID is something that I got used to very quickly. Another myth to debunk is going to be that jelly scroll issue. Again, technically does it have it? I guess yes it does, but it only happens in certain situations when you're scrolling very quickly, when the brightness is all the way turned up. And again, even when the jelly scrolling issue did come out when the iPad mini 6 came out, after about 2 weeks, all the noise fell apart. Nobody continued to talk about it because in day-to-day use, you don't really notice it whatsoever. So again, do I wish it was 120 Hz ProMotion display with 1000 nit brightness and 1600 nit HDR brightness? Of course I wish that, but then this turns into something completely different and it's not the same product. The 60 Hz display is more than fine. It still handles everything perfectly. Apple Pencil still has very little to no latency at all, so it doesn't affect your day-to-day. And like I mentioned, could have Apple maybe upgraded it a little bit, changed the display tech? Maybe, but then they probably wouldn't have given us 128 gigs as a baseline storage as opposed to the 64 that we had in the last model. So again, another great thing to have with this iPad mini 7 is that the new baseline storage is 128 gigs, and it now goes to 512 gigs of storage if you do want to upgrade it that much. So overall, the design, it's one of those things that if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And now I want to talk about the best feature of this thing, which has to be the Weildability, which is something I guess I'm making up here because, like I mentioned, I do use my M4 iPad Pro as my main computer, and that is my powerhouse and my workhorse. And when I render stuff on this thing, it absolutely flies with everything that I throw at it. And this isn't as powerful, but it's plenty powerful if you do want to get into it. And then you have the 6.9-inch iPhone 16 Pro Max, which a lot of people would say if you don't want to use your larger 13-inch M4 iPad Pro, you would probably just use your 6.9-inch iPhone 16 Pro Max for those use cases where you would want to use maybe your iPad mini. And there's something about the size of the iPad mini, the form factor, the lightweight nature of it. The 8.3-inch display does give you a lot more screen real estate, even though on paper it's only 1.4 inches larger. In real-world use cases, it does add a lot more pixels and a lot more to be added to the actual screen itself. And one of the big things is that this is running iPadOS 18, meaning that you can have side-by-side applications. Yes, you cannot have Stage Manager like with the other M series iPad Pros and things like that, but just the fact that we can have two different applications running at the same time, which is something that for some reason Apple has not given us on any iOS product for that matter. So being able to do that on here is a big reason why I like it, because it's still smaller and easy to use as an actual iPad versus something like the M4 iPad Pro, which is what I use as a laptop. Being able to use two applications at once is something that I use on a day-to-day basis. And then overall, it's just, the screen's a little bit larger, it's a little bit easier to view content. I love this for during football season when I'm watching NFL Sunday Ticket and I'm following my teams and their statistics. It just lets you do a little bit more where you would otherwise feel crammed on the 6.9-inch screen, which is still a large screen for a phone. But the 8.3 inches just is much better for content consumption, for reading long emails, for being able to answer those emails, for being able to just get more done overall. Again, from a kind of simple task standpoint. So my use cases of my iPad mini 7 fits nicely where it can do some things that the 6.9-inch 16 Pro Max can't do, and also where the M4 iPad Pro would be kind of overkill for me to be able to bring that size and that weight with me wherever I go. So if I'm going on a weekend trip, if I'm doing something quick where I know I'm not going to work, I'm bringing this iPad mini over bringing my iPad Pro. So I'm absolutely in love with the iPad mini 7. Does it have its faults? Of course, it's not going to be the perfect device. Do I wish they made like a $1,000 version of it with everything being super ultra premium? I kind of like the way that it is. It's more of a playfully natured iPad, but that can still get some work done. Something I can give to my daughter, something I can share with my wife, something that's kind of like a house iPad, but I can still use it when I need it to on business occasions to do some personal finances. And the form factor and the size is absolutely perfect for one-handed use still, or even the double-handed use, to use it kind of like a large phablet if you remember what that is back in the day. So overall, the combination of the Pencil Pro support, Apple Intelligence, the A17 Pro, amazing battery life, and then the overall wieldability makes the iPad mini 7 probably my favorite iPad of all time. But that'll do it, everybody. Leave some comments down below what you think. Is the iPad mini 7 something that you would consider? I would even recommend if you find a used iPad mini 6, or Amazon still has iPad mini 6s for sale, I think for like $350. And if you don't care about the Apple Intelligence and the A17 Pro, that's still a wonderful device that'll work with the Apple Pencil 2 and still last you a decent amount of time. Just make sure that you're aware of the 64 gigs versus the 128, but for $300 or $350, it's hard to beat the iPad mini 6 prices. But the iPad mini 7 with Apple Intelligence, which is something that I'm using more and more day to day, is something that I just absolutely love. But that'll do it, like I mentioned. If you made it to the end of this video, leave a little dolphin in the comments down below so I know you made it to the end of the video. And leave a comment down below how you use your iPad mini. Are you a current iPad mini owner? Are you watching this to see if you should get an iPad mini? Let me know in the comment down below, and I'll leave links to the iPad mini 7 and the iPad mini 6 for the best deals that I could find online. But that'll do it. If you want to watch more videos like this one, definitely check out one of these videos right here. YouTube thinks you're going to like this video, and I think you're going to like this video right here. Until next time, peace.